we hear you.
Yeah, well, thank you. First of all, thank you very much. It's a big honor and enormous pleasure for me to speak at this event devoted to a great mathematician or researcher and a Renaissance man and an admirable human being, admirable friend, Boris Abramovich Trachtenbrod. I'm sorry, I still cannot get used to boss. For us, for Lena and myself, it's he has always been Boris Abramovich. Yes. So it's hyperderivations for epistemic logic. I try not to overspill too much over my time. And given a verbal description of an epistemic situation, a typical epistemic user cherry picks a natural model, Kripke or Oman's model, and regards it as a formalization of the original description. This is the habit which I've been fighting for decades, and doesn't seem to sink well within the epistemics or epistemic logicians' minds. So it's time to come with a reasonable alternative. So this approach of cherry picking one natural model carries two fundamental deficiencies. And if you talk to epistemic logicians, they trend after a while they trend to agree, yes, maybe, yes, but then nothing changes. So I think it's time to begin changing, to make an effort, one more effort to change this kind of a culture. So the deficiencies are fundamental. The cherry picking natural model covers only complete description, whereas intuitively most epistemic situations are partially described and cannot be adequately specified by a single model. And the second, also less obvious, but also fatal, actually. The traditional epistemic readings of Kripke's own models tacitly requires common knowledge of the model, which restricts their generality and utility even further. So when I want to go to the major consumption, one of the big consumptions of epistemic logic is epistemic game theories. And when you just open the standard textbooks on game theory, which is thick enough, then you will see the chapter about epistemic foundations, and they list something which regards some principles which correspond to S5 model logic, and then they settle for Oman structures, which are perfectly fine models for S5 kind of reasoning. But when it goes to example, it's always muddy children, or in disguise, muddy children, unfaithful wives, or smart girls, or whatever, with some combinations. And this alone would raise a big question mark. Where are other examples? And the answer is there are none, because this is an example where the cherry picking the natural model, it has a unique natural model modulated by simulation. So that's why replacing the syntactic reasoning by reasoning about the model is harmless. But only in this particular case, and this situation is not complete in this respect, because again, muddy children has a complete, syntactically complete, it's a complete situation, then this method just doesn't work. And it was carefully hidden from the eyes of the users. Then this is not a method, this is a nice, happy, lucky example. It's not, there is no method behind it. So we suggest a new framework, which is almost as easy, as natural as Kripke models. This would be the basic semantical tool for us. And it actually cures of both of these defects. So it will be certainly a step forward. So motivating example, the coin is tossed and lands, hands up, Alice sees the coin, Bob doesn't. In natural Kripke model M1, if you give this problem to a standard or a student of the epistemic logic class, he or she will immediately, next week she comes with an answer, two possible worlds, it's a Kripke model M1, two possible worlds 1 and 2, And proposition H hence holds at 1, doesn't hold at 2. And the whole model is, of course, common knowledge, but not the real world. And so the indistinguishability relations for A loop around 1 and 2 because Alice knows where she is and Bob doesn't have a clue. So it's for Bob, 1 and 2 are indistinguishable. And we immediately hit the defect. So there's overspecification defect, which basically everybody saw, but people tended to ignore it, but which is clearly not well principled and clearly not good for applications. So what about Alice knows that Bob doesn't know H? KA in the model language, where K and KB denote knowledge operators for Alice and Bob respectively. Then KA not KB of H. This is a model representation. Alice knows that Bob doesn't know H. The model suggests that it is the case because not KBH holds in both worlds 1 and 2. And by the standard Kripken doctrine, we have to conclude that Alice knows that not KBH there. The same holds for Bob knows that Alice knows whether H. Knows whether means knows H or knows not H. So in both of these worlds, Alice knows whether H, and hence, according to Kripke methodology or the Kripke algorithm, B, Bob should know that this is the case. But none of these bullets actually follows from the description. And it's very easy to imagine the informal or formal situation when Alice doesn't know this, the same here. So it points at a fundamental problem. Single model specifications are complete by its design, whereas syntactic description, including our motivating example, are usually not complete. So how to fight these overspecifications? There are two major avenues of doing this. One is called supervaluations. We consider all the models of the situations, or rather a theory, not only cherry-picked one, and assume that S holds the situation of this description if S is true under all evaluations. And this approach has been basically adopted in mathematical logic and manifests itself in Gödel completeness theory. We say that something is true in, say, first order predicate logic, if and only if it holds in all models of this. And the same holds for any theory, and something holds in Peano arithmetic, if and only if it holds in all the models of Peano. There's also an alternative avenue, which is non-standard truth values. Most popular Kleene, as we just heard, three-valued logic, other more exotic ways of defining truth values. The set of semantical tools, however, did not dethrone formal theories and mathematical logic, neither has it changed the natural model culture and epistemology. So it's a very nice avenue, but we'll just pick by several reasons, aesthetical and historical, we'll pick the evaluation road, being completely aware that it's the parallel avenue, which is more or less mathematically the same, or bisimilar and formally speaking. So we'll just follow supervaluation traditions we want to acknowledge another tradition as well. We introduce theories in possible worlds. So this was notoriously absent in the epistemic logic. In mathematical logic, there are theories and models. We cannot just consider only complete theories which correspond to models. Then we'll lose at least half of the logic. Maybe even the most famous half, in particular, all Gödel incompleteness theorems, etc. So this is but this step has never been made in epistemic logic, at least in a widely accepted manner. So some basics about derivations versus model. A Kripke model in epistemic setting is a pointed model. It's a pair, it's a Kripke model and a designated so-called real world. The one just designated world from which we're reading the, the truth value. Formal F follows semantically from gamma if gamma models F or gamma yields F, if F holds in each pointed model of gamma. There is a well-known completeness theorems, and a pointed model is an exact model of gamma if derivability in gamma, syntactical derivability in gamma, corresponds to the validity in a given pointed Kripke model. And gamma is semantically definable, means gamma has an exact model. The quite trivial observation is this, actually is that only complete sets of formulas are semantically definable. Well, a set of formulas is complete if for each formula is semantically complete. Gamma derives F or gamma derives not F. And here are the trivial baby examples, but pretty instructive for our purposes. We consider two agents with modalities Ki and Kin2, and keep in mind that it may be the basic logic may be S5 or S4 or any other model logic which you assign some epistemic value. They're all, what we're talking will be equally applicable to all of them. So there are three examples. One is ignorance. Gamma consists of just single propositional letter M. It's not known to agents. It basically says that M is true but not known. We don't assume it's known. So neither K1M nor not Kim is derivable, so gamma is incomplete, apparently. Mutual knowledge. Okay, let's throw in something, like say M is not only true, but also known to each of the agents. Both agents have first order knowledge of M. However, second order knowledge assertions like K2, K1M are independent, so gamma is incomplete. But you can easily imagine that in game theoretic situation, it's not only important to state that the agent knows M, but also that his adversary or partner knows that he or she knows this particular M or doesn't know, whatever. So the second order knowledge is also quite important. And the third example will be complete knowledge, CM. So we claim we just postulate gamma is something which reflects the idea of a common knowledge of M. Again, pick your favorite understanding of common knowledge, and they all fit. And this thing, by the way, is complete. It's an easy theorem to prove that this gamma is complete in this particular syntactic sense. So each formula in this language is either provable or not provable. Provable, negation is provable, disprovable. So that's the theorem one, which is actually a proposition observation. Well known that gamma is semantically definable if and only if gamma is complete by the canonical model construction. If it's complete, just take the, yes, if it's semantically definable, then it's complete. If it's complete, just take the canonical model and it's a world in canonical model. So it's semantically definable. This observation shows the limitations. So incomplete scenarios, which are plenty, are not defined by a model. This is a very trivial observation. I'm really just surprised that people didn't peddle this for a while. Since intuitively complete scenarios, gamma are exceptions, most intuitively epistemic situations cannot be defined by a single model. And corollary ignorance and the mutual knowledge are not semantically definable. Common knowledge is semantically definable. And yes. By the way, when you go to the traditional epistemic game theory, that there are traditional assumptions as common knowledge of the game and rationality. They don't try to mess, and then they end up with the Oman structures or the model theoretic approach. Incomplete scenario, muddy children, explicit, we'll call it. The sun-mud children puzzle happened to be complete and hence enjoy a single model specification. But the hidden value in this muddy children is that it's the only almost the only example which actually works, which is complete, has a complete syntactic description. All other reasonable examples are not complete. I'll give you immediately an example. A group of n children, it's a natural modification of muddy children. A group of n children meets their father after playing in the mud. Each child sees everybody else's foreheads. The father says, "K of you are muddy," after which it becomes common knowledge that each child knows whether he or she is muddy. Why? Well, this description doesn't actually specify whether a given child initially knows if she is muddy before the whole conversation. Hence, the description of MC and K is incomplete. So by theorem one, it's not semantically definable, hence it cannot be treated by the natural model, naive natural model methods. However, here's a formal analysis which can be easily shaped as a formal logical reason. After father announcement, his child knows it's a solution. After each child knows that if she sees K muddy foreheads, then she herself is not muddy, and if she sees K minus 1 muddy foreheads, she herself is muddy. This secures that each child knows whether she is muddy, and moreover, everybody, since the kids are assumed to be smart, everybody can reflect on this reasoning, and this makes it common knowledge that each child knows whether she is muddy. Then another example close to the game theory's mind is Centipede game. It's Centipede Lite. We consider a variant of Centipede Lite, and it's a performational tree-like game with 3 nodes where Alice and Bob in turn making decisions. And in the node 1, Alice has an option to opt down and to get payoff 2 and lending payoff 1 for Bob, or to pass the control, to play cross to pass the control to Bob. Then the Bob plays down, having 1, and giving 4 to Alice, and or to play cross and to return control to Alice. Then she plays down for the payoff 4 and 3 for Bob, or she plays across 3 and 6. So we assume that Alice and Bob are rational. Note that it is actually a considerable weakening of the usual assumption. The usual analysis of Centipede game assumes that Alice and Bob, the rationality and Alice and Bob is common knowledge. It is not what we are assuming here. Alice and Bob, they may not see each other. They have no idea about the rationality. They may not be aware that even that it's a human, not a bot, who plays according to some funny algorithm. So, but we know that each of the players is rational. Means that he or she always opts for the best known payoff. So the Centipede Lite admits rigorous analysis. At 3, Alice plays down because she's rational, of course. At 2, Bob plays down because he's risk averse and cannot rule out that Alice plays down, since it's true. Bob cannot know that Alice doesn't play down because actually Alice plays down by reflexivity. So Bob plays down, not because he knows that Alice plays down, which is the usual epistemic reasoning, assuming common knowledges, but because he cannot rule out Alice playing down. And the similar occurs in 1. Alice plays down not because she knows that Bob plays down. She has no idea how the Bob plays, but she cannot rule out from what she knows about the game that Bob plays down, and she will get the miserable payoff 1. So playing safe, she plays down here. So it's the same backward induction solution down at each node but from quite different reasoning and, well, quite different motivations. However, this kind of the Centipede Lite is off the scope of the traditional cherry-picked single model methods, because CL is not complete. Epistemic assumptions such as Bob knows that Alice knows plays across 3 is not specified. Hence, CL cannot be, Centipede Lite cannot be defined by a single common model and cannot be analyzed. So you see that this kind of the incomplete scenarios are ubiquitous. How typical are they? Informally incomplete Descriptions are true rule rather than exception. And we just saw examples that mutual knowledge of rationality, asymmetric epistemic assumptions lead to incompleteness and semantic undefinability. So incomplete scenarios intuitively are like the dark matter of epistemic universe. They're everywhere, but cannot be visualized in a single model. It's okay as a normal exercise. If you like working with the Kripke model theoretically, fine, just enjoy yourself. But don't pretend that you're covering a reasonable variety of epistemic scenarios. It is not the case. So we need for incomplete formalizations. Of course, it's a well understood need, but however, do we need to formalize incomplete descriptions? After all, from a naive point of view, real epistemic situations are complete. At a single moment, the person knows something, or he does, well, something holds or something doesn't. The answer is yes, an idealized epistemic scenario can be assumed to be complete, but its description may be incomplete. It's almost always incomplete and admit many incomplete extensions. And incomplete theories in mathematical logic, as I mentioned, piano arithmetic, formal analysis, axiomatic set theories, ZF, I don't know, group theory, or etc. They're all incomplete. You cannot throw them out. We have to learn to study them and to learn to live with them. Do we need possible world structure? It's another extreme. Okay, forget about possible worlds, forget about the models, just postulate everything as a plain theory without possible worlds and the corresponding model logic and just do derivations. The answer is some epistemic situations actually carry a natural structure of possible worlds, like heads and tails and coin tossing, which should be reflected in formalization. Will show that epistemic information can be lost without using possible worlds in formalization. So it's a must. And people in epistemology as a philosophical discipline, they know that there's no life without possible worlds, but we cannot idealize that. So hypertheory is a bird's eye view. Hypertheory is a natural extension of the well-established notion of formal theory to the possible world environment. It's a combination of familiar logical ingredients, derivation of possible worlds, and they offer a straight remedy to overspecification, common knowledge, and model weakness of epistemic descriptions. Informally, a hypertheory is like an epistemic Kripke model. It has a set of possible worlds, the postulated accessibility relations, but unlike the traditional Kripke models, each huge possible world carries a theory, a set of propositions, T subscript U, not a complete truth evaluation. Let's do this, look again at this coin toss example. An observer O, I'm a little bit more careful in formulating it. Observer O has learned that the coin was tossed. Alice saw the coin, Bob doesn't. On this basis, O forms a hypertheory HO, which is the same possible worlds, 1 and 2, and actually the same accessibility or indistinguishability relation. Loops around 1 and 2 indistinguishability by a link between 1 and 2. But what we do differently, we're not assuming the Kripke algorithm of recovering all the truth values from there. We are much more careful about this. We say, okay, what is known? So we populate each world with a small theory corresponding to this world. What is actually known in this description? It says that in T1 is in world 1, what is true. So it's H and K of H. So Alice knows H. And the world 2, not H and K, and Alice knows not H. This is what is wired into the description. So the fact that these things that H calls it 1 and doesn't call it 2 are common knowledge, no other common knowledge assumptions, at least follow from description, and so we just follow the description. Oh, a suite of hypertheories. Actually, hypertheories correspond to agents, universes, substructures of observers subtheory. So the Ellis subtheory, hyper subtheory, hypertheory of Ellis is two worlds, all both distinguishable, and these are descriptions of what Ellis knows about this. Ellis is not aware of Bob's knowledge or ignorance. It is not given in the description. The hypertheory HB of Bob is, well, similar story, H not H. He has no idea about what Ellis knows, but what he is aware that he cannot distinguish between 1 and 2. And Bob is not aware of Ali's knowledge. This is what we read from the description. So formally, the hypertheory in a multi-agent logic case and the basic case, because there are some, we know that this approach is extremely flexible and extremely expressible and powerful. So we have to be a little bit careful to use it. So in the base case, hypertheory is the set of walls, the postulated set of accessibility relations. And it's called the frame, and T is an assignment of a set of formulas T of each. So it's called the theory in world U. So it's the same as, it's like a usual theory of the base logic, but in multiple worlds. We consider it's a conglomerate of worlds with given postulated accessibility relations and theory in each world. And this is our theory, it's an axiom set. That's what we're given. So a model H is a Kripke model where with a new frame, we're entitled to throw in new worlds, because the ideology is, of course, that since a partial description, we are not sure that all the worlds are already mentioned there, which we need to understand what's going on. The same holds for accessibility relations, and there's the usual Kripke enforcing the thing. So this is a model. It's a possible reading of this thing. How this partial description, what kind of model it can correspond to in this Kripke model. And of course, each individual theory should be true in the given world, in the given Kripkean true force in the world U. So informally, M as a model, its frame extends H and theories are valid in the corresponding worlds. A model of H allows additional facts, states, and links, and this reflects the ideology that formal description can be incomplete. Hypertheories, formally, again, the basic case, we have a definition, hyperderivations. It's the hyperderivable HU. Formula F is hyperderivable in the given world U. If F can be obtained by the rules of logical inference, so we do all the usual logical derivations of the given world U. Oh, sorry. Geez, where we are. Yes, the tradition, that's the good one. It's a very modalish, say it says, if F is known at U, then F is true in all the worlds accessible from U for a given agent I. One way, not two ways, by good reason, because we are not sure that we know all the possible worlds. So that our I of U gives us a description of all possibilities from U. So we cannot make the converse conclusion that if F holds in all visible worlds, then I know this F, because the key ingredient of this conclusion that all postulated worlds are all worlds in reality is missing. So the deduction theorem, if A hyperderives B at U, then U derives A implies B. You can say, well, wait a minute, the deduction theorem is a meta theorem and the usual propositional or even model logic, if you're careful with the necessitation rule. Yes, but not here, because here we just postulated. It's a valid rule, so we just postulated. And consistency. If the possible world is inconsistent, that you're inconsistent. And the given hypertheory, we denote the set of formulas hyperderivative. These are just the usual conditions which every logician who is aware of Kripke models immediately accepts as valid rules, of course. full observability property. And as I mentioned, if F holds in all accessible worlds, then, it doesn't mean that F is known at U. But the reasons are clear. But we're free to make it by just upgrading the hyperderivations system. We can mark as fully observable given world U, and for this kind of worlds which are fully observable, but it's an additional assumption which we make explicit. We use this rule 1. Or agent interactions in the base case, hypertheories do not assume cross knowledge of epistemic assumptions, and so it's immediately applicable to the tossing coin example. But for future, if such cross knowledge is in description, it should be reflected in corresponding hypertheories by adding corresponding rules of inference, which is a very natural thing to do. But there are so many possibilities that I decided not to include it into the basic installments. Some property of hyperderivations. So again, we're back to the usual model logic derivations, but now we operate in multiple possible worlds in some coherent manner. So monotonicity, of course, if we add something in U postulate and U, it's not in the world U, but somewhere in some other world, then the hyperderivation survives. Identity, if A is a postulate, it's hyperderivable. Consistency, proliferation, both ways. If U is inconsistent, then all accessible worlds are inconsistent too. And the reverse transition, a useful thing, it says that, yes, if V hyperderives not F, then U hyperderives at not Ki of F. So these are the usual natural properties, and this is the nice exercise to just check admissibility of reverse transition. It actually follows from all the rules which I assumed. So semantically, a sentence F logically follows from hypertheory if it holds in each model M of H. And this definition views a hypertheory as a specification for a class of models. We are in the familiar design, in the familiar condition when there is a theory, in this case hypertheory, and the class of its models. That's what the mathematical logicians live with all their lives. So by this definition, each formula which doesn't follow from U in H fails in some model of H. This provides a potent mode of establishing that something is not doesn't follow logically by finding from given hypertheory, by finding Kripke model in which F falls, without which is important, endorsing M as the wide and only right model. We're free to use the Kripke models, but we're not forced to marry them, to endorse them as the right and only model, which is almost always a bad idea. Soundness completeness theorem for hypertheory, semantically validness is the same as hyperderivation. Surprisingly easy proof. So examples of coin tossing revisited. So observer known that Alice saw the coin, but doesn't. His observer hypertheory over 2 agent reflects that's the one. I just suppress the loops for better visibility. And we just derive what we want. Or we actually wanted to know that in one, which is a real world, Bob doesn't know H. It's not postulated but since there's not H here by reverse transition, we can just derive it at one. It's immediate, yes. The same conclusion is which you would do facing the Kripke model of a similar design. So this is one more moment. You argue as if it is a Kripke model, but at a certain moment, you don't use the dangerous reverse implication, which I mentioned. Don't assume that what you see is the whole story. That's the idea. So in a contrast, so how we avoid hyper over specification. one doesn't hyperderive that Alice knows that not against B. So the observer cannot conclude that Alice knows that Bob doesn't know H. To establish this, we find a model HO in which K1, this is our specification example, fails at 1. And how we do it? We just build an artificial world H, which is consistent with what we saw there. And we make it A undistinguishable from 1. And it will be the world and so on. So no non-trivial B links out of there. So it means that Bob knows H at 3. And therefore, one cannot, in this model, M2, one cannot conclude that at 1, sorry, Alice cannot know that Bob doesn't know H because of this artificial worldview. And hence, by all these complete soundness theorems, one doesn't hyperderive the whole thing, unlike the case for the usual model. If it were the usual model, we should make our one way or the other, we should make conclusion, but we are free not to. And this reflects the idea that Alice doesn't really know about the B link between 1 and 2, and hence cannot conclude that Bob doesn't know H. You see how flexible the whole thing is. And again, this is not the model which we marry for life. This is just a technical tool, and just we go ahead. What about this one, the second example, that Bob knows whether Alice knows H, or Bob knows that Alice knows whether H, sorry. How just we build another artificial model. The B here, I'll just check the details. And in this model, at 1, which is the real world, KB, KAWH fails, and hence one cannot hyperderive, the hypertheory cannot derive the thing. So the order specification disappears. This reflects the idea that Bob is uncertain about RA link between 1 and 2, and he imagines 3 and 4 clones of 1 and 2, whether a link between them is present. Why did children revisit it? Well, I'm afraid that I'm running out of time. So the same story can be, the same technique can be applied to model Why Did Children 2, the same story and very natural thing. So hypertheories and partial knowledge, ignorance, okay, can be defined, yes. Now the back-to-back comparison of formal models. So this is one of the final slides. So what are the options? When you give the thing, coin toss an example, Alice sees the coin, Bob doesn't. We can use a theory. Just forget about possible worlds. Then I promise you an example. We just do the plain theory over, say, S5. So what we postulate there? H, where the coin tossed lends heads, which actually follows from the KH, but Alice knows H and Bob doesn't know H. This is this is a message of the whole thing, it appears to be. It's underspecified because it does not prove that it's possible for B that A knows not H. But you can easily build a model when you add KB not KA not H in there, and it's satisfiable. So this thing is not derivable in S5 from these assumptions. But this is a valid principle which apparently follows from the description. What did we miss? We missed the world, possible world 2. This is where hypertheory comes handy. It appears adequate. So we postulate the world 1, world 2, and we'll do simultaneous derivations, world 1 and world 2. And we hyperderive at 1 that that B cannot know, or it's possible for Bob to know that Alice doesn't know not H. Or Alice knows not H. It's an easy exercise, but nice exercise. Sunday morning exercise. And finally, the Kripke model. We do the naive old style, we just jump into Kripke modeling, we cherry pick the model. Here it is, but it's overspecified, and it's actually badly overspecified, because the crucial for epistemic game theory, second order knowledge claims are just totally mistreated with a Kripke model of this kind. So the principal features of hypertheories. Hypertheories represent a complete description of possible worlds, which vastly extends the expressive power of epistemic logic. Negative information hypertheories is more nuanced and more realistic than incomplete models. And I'm sorry I have to preach to the choir of mathematical logicians these kind of things, because we know with our mother's milk, then in a given theory, a given F can be derived or can be disproven, but can be neither. And this is the third possibility, which we return back to the epistemic logic. And the variety of models can be used as a technical tool to show non-probability, thus relying on Kripke model without committing to a specific model. And this is actually the last slide now. So such limitations as insufficient control over possible worlds in conventional theories or specification and common knowledge of the model, requirements in Kripke models are naturally overcome in hypertheories. All conventional theories are hypertheories. All Kripke models are hypertheories. Hypertheories are based on well-established and widely known ideas such as derivations. And conventional Kripke modeling and hypertheories open numerous research avenues in both logic and applications. And I hope to make a contribution on the culture change in epistemology, because it's a shame to still see the papers where they speak about all possible epistemic situations. Then when you go what they're doing, they cherry pick Kripke models and do some, belief revision or updates through the specific Kripke models, which are identified as epistemic scenarios. It doesn't seem the right way to go. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Sergei. Any questions, comments, remarks? Arnon has a question.
Of course, Arnon always has a question. Thank you.
Well, and I have time now, which I don't. I would have some recollection about the meeting of Sergei, Boris Abramovich and me, but maybe tomorrow. What I would like to ask you, Sergei, did you try to show, to prove that hypertheories cannot be somehow reduced, simulated by ordinary Kripke frames?
Well, say it again, because yes, say it again and try to speak to the mic.
I guess that that these are a real generalization of the concept of usual Kripke frames. But sometimes what seems to be a generalization, one can show it can be reduced by some kind of simulation, by a bigger Kripke frame or something, that everything, it might be that everything can be done by using hypertheories, can be done by using also a usual Kripke theory, but not the direct one, but maybe something more complicated. I'm asking if you have tried to show that this is impossible.
Yeah, by examples. Let's turn, yes. Just the baby example, which probably, look at this, my example of theory T. No Kripke frames at all. And so when you read it naively, this is what it's plain specification. But then what you can do, you can hide your hypertheory on the back of your mind, like a hidden lemma you use for yourself only. You don't show it to the world. You do the derivation and you just read the theory, which appeared to be in the world one, the real world, after all the reasoning is done. And then you sell it as a theory, the plain theory. Apparently, there will be not KB, not KA, not H in there too, along with many other things. Is it a reduction or it is not a reduction? because we actually made hypertheory reasoning, but then we reverse engineered the plane theory there. Is it an example of reduction you're talking about?
No, that's how I mean that the hypertheory, we have here two words. So maybe, I don't think this is the case, but I would like, if it'd be nice to have a theorem.
Well,
maybe
absolutely.
Four words in order to put some of the information that you put in the theories, to put in the words. That's what I mean, and have bigger brains.
Absolutely. Yeah. The main thrust of this effort is to change the culture, because nothing of these ingredients is actually sensationally new, except for the special combination with the suggestion to use it properly in the proper things. If you wish, so this the principal thing is to convince, I'm just going to my abstract, even to convince the traditional epistemic theories that this 1 and 2 should be taken seriously. Because this is the main thrust. If we agree that 1 and 2, we should take care of it, then we can immediately agree where to go. And there are different ways to go, and one goes one way, other way, and we came with a probably equivalent, quote unquote, solutions or competing solutions of the same problem. But the main thing for this crowd is to convince them to put the nose up to their feet and to begin reading and looking around and understanding that we need a better approach on the fundamental level. So, and then I would be more than happy if I have enough lifetime to do this, or you students or my students or any other people who find it interesting to do this. Absolutely. So that's the message, Sergei. Thank you very much. I'm afraid that I took all the time with my lavish answer. You had to vacate the room.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Sergei.
Thank you, Alex. Thank you for inviting me. Big honor. Yes.
And it is the last talk of today, and tomorrow we have one more exciting day.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. See you tomorrow.
See you all tomorrow. Yes.